Star Wars 7 by 7 episode 1897. Today we're going to wrap up our conversation about the novel Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge, Black Spire by talking about the state of the First Order at the time of the novel. Let's go. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7 by 7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. So we did talk a little bit about the First Order yesterday on the episode where we talked about the state of the Resistance in Black Spire. And, it's kind of hard to talk about one without talking about the other, but to recap a little bit of that before we go off into other directions, the First Order has had control of the galaxy, or presumed control of the galaxy, for 4 months. Oh yes, I should say this is spoilerific for Black Spire, as with previous episodes this week, and so if you haven't read it and don't want it spoiled for you, save this for a later date. I'm not spoiling the major plot details or anything like that, so it's not like I'm going to utterly ruin the book. I'm just talking about the state of the First Order itself, but there will be spoilery details. So anyway, as we previously discussed, we're 4 months out from the events of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi when we get into the meat of the Black Spire novel. And at this point, even the folks on Batuu still think that the First Order is, maybe not even real. Maybe it's just something that people are cooking up as rumors to scare people, but they have no actual belief in the First Order. So that could just be because of where they are in the galaxy, being on the edge of both wild space and the unknown regions. They have no clue about what's going on with the First Order, and so that would kind of suggest that wherever it was that the First Order was coming out of the unknown regions into the known galaxy, that maybe it wasn't necessarily near Batuu. If you look at a galactic map and you're looking at it flat, basically, you're talking about sort of the northwest quadrant or the southwest quadrant of the galaxy being two places where the combination of known space and unknown regions and wild space come together. And so Batuu must be, or could in theory be, in a place where they weren't spilling out of the unknown regions. And that would seem to suggest that they are also then not near the planet Castellon, which is where the majority of the action for Season 1 of Star Wars Resistance took place. But be that as it may, certainly the folks of Batuu find out that the First Order does in fact exist, and they're not very nice. Or at least they certainly come to realize that they're not very nice through the course of events in Black Spire. But as we talked about yesterday, whether they have full control of the galaxy, if we're only 4 months in to that whole situation, well, it seems kind of unlikely. Like, they might have control of hyperspace lanes, they might have control of major population centers, but as far as like full control of the galaxy the way the Empire does, it's unlikely that they have that level of control just yet. And as for our major First Order antagonist, that would be Wulfgar Cath, Lieutenant Wulfgar Cath. So he apparently is on the outs in his own way. We find out that he was previously assigned to the Absolution, which is the First Order Star Destroyer / battle cruiser, where most of the action of one half of Phasma took place. That was where she was captured, where Vimerati was captured and taken by Captain Cardinal and hidden in the bowels of the Absolution and interrogated for a good part of that novel. So it turned out that Vimerati snuck Cardinal off the Absolution right under the nose of Wulfgar Cath, and he at the time noted that the armor that Vimerati was using didn't seem to fit quite right, but didn't say anything about it, and apparently he got busted for it. Busted to the point where he is no longer serving on the Absolution, he is now serving on a different Star Destroyer called the Penumbra. So this mission ends up being a shot at redemption for him, because General Hux himself calls and says, hey, we've gotten word that the Resistance spy Vimerati is on Batuu, and I want you to go and fix the mess that you created. He's putting it right on Wulfgar Cath. I mean, there were other people that could have spotted Vi and Cardinal and could have stopped him, so why Hux has to be picking on Cath, I don't know. But he's certainly someone who, the picking on is effective, because it certainly motivates Wolfgar Kath to get the job done. But once he finds out that Vi is on there, he decides that he wants more. He doesn't just want to bring Vi back because he's trying to get back into the good graces of the First Order and thinks that his way up the ladder is going to be a lot easier if he's able to do more than just bring Vi Maradi back. But it doesn't seem like Hux is even interested in anything more, doesn't think much of Batu, and if there's any sort of resistance happening on there, well, it's not worth considering. Really, they have other concerns to deal with. And I think the Vi Maradi thing is a personal one, but there is also the thing that Vi Maradi says too, which is that she has knowledge of Leia Organa, and certainly the First Order wants that very badly indeed. In fact, that is one of the things that Wolfgar Kath interrogates Vi Maradi about when he captures her at one point in the novel. And oh my goodness, Delilah Dawson has some particular capacity for dealing with interrogation scenes that is altogether, I'll say horrific, and I mean that in a complimentary way, which sounds a little strange, but let me explain. What I mean by that is that the interrogation scene that happens in Black Spire is just like skin-crawlingly like, oh gosh. It is extremely effectively written, and you know, when you experience it, you know, it's hard. If I had been reading it instead of listening to it, I might have been kind of skipping down the page a little bit because it was just, you know, that much that so realistic and, you know, so well done that I was just like, oh, it's almost too much for me to handle. And there's one other thing that is somewhat First Order related, but also just canon timeline related that we haven't talked about yet, but I think we have actually touched on a little bit, but I just want to clarify what we know now at this point. I'll do that after the break. Stay tuned. This episode is brought to you by Constant Contact, the premier email marketing solution for small businesses and organizations. I've used their service since 2003, and over the past decade and a half, I've watched them evolve, make the product simpler, more powerful, easy to use, and do everything that they can to help train people to use the product more effectively and for it to work with other forms of marketing like social media, for example. So check out sw7x7.com/email to learn more about Constant Contact and start a free trial. Once again, that is sw7x7.com/email for a free trial. Welcome back. So we've talked about the whole timeline situation with Black Spire and A Crash of Fate and the Galaxy's Edge Day, but we have a better sense of it now thanks to the publication of Black Spire. So it turns out that A Crash of Fate basically takes place in between the meat of Black Spire and the epilogue of Black Spire. And the reason that we know this is because, like I said, I'm not going to spoil the major plot elements of Black Spire, just details here and there. So I will suffice it to say that when we get the novel of Crash of Fate, the First Order has sympathizers on the planet, but the First Order isn't actually there. But there is a scene where somebody who is not named but seems to be very clearly Vi Maradi appears in the novel briefly, and so she is on planet at that time. Well, based on the way Black Spire ended, it seems as though it's taking place in between because, yes, stormtroopers show up on Black Spire during the course of the novel, but by the end of the meat of the novel, the stormtroopers aren't there anymore. And so, I'll leave it at that. And then sometime in the intervening weeks, we have the events of A Crash of Fate, and then we have the epilogue that takes place where Kylo Ren and a bunch of the 709th Legion show up to root out this resistance nonsense, and that's where things go from there. And so there you go. That's your update on the First Order and even a timeline update from Black Spire, and that's going to do it for this episode of the show as well. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.